we are happy to have you and this topic. And yeah, so just to make it short, you can start.
I will share my slides. Can you all share my slides? I see my slides?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks a lot, Uma and Julie, for giving me the opportunity to interact with you. To give this small presentation on unlocking the agroecological potentials of crop diversification. I did not know the student's background or at what stage of your degrees. But I will try to make sure that I will not go so much into the technical details, and wherever we see there's a lot of numbers, figures, I will just try to briefly say that and not go into it. But I will try to talk from from a little higher level so that everyone can understand more. My name is Raj Chongtham, and then Uma asked me if I should give a little introduction of myself. I'm originally from India. I come from the northeastern part of India, so you see that a bit of my surname sounds a little bit like Little Asian or Southeast Asian, and then Iman Raj it's more of an Indian name. I'm a researcher in cropping systems diversification, and I'm also the Deputy Program Director of the Masters in Agroecology program at the university. So I do some research, and also I do some teaching. Without taking further, I will start with my presentation. And should we? How is it? Should we take a break after 45 minutes or so? How does it work with you, Uma?
I think we can no, because we will stop by somewhere. The time is quite short, so it's better not taking any break. And then, if student you want to have a question, you can directly direct it to Dr. Raj, or you can put in the chat. Anything.
I will try to. As I said, I have a lot of. I have put many things, but I will try to not go into that detail. But maybe I will try to keep some few minutes so we could have some questions and discussion. So that will be more meaningful than to give more technical details, because you will learn or you will know about this later on. So my presentation will cover some of the basic challenges facing agriculture as an introduction to it, and then I will talk about what are the intensifications and what consequences we are having it, and I'll talk about two crop diversification strategies, crop diversification in space, which is intercropping, with mainly focus on legumes, because legumes is it's my subject area, because I work with a lot of legumes and beans, and even call me Mr. Beans. And then I will also talk about the crop diversification in time, which is more about crop rotation. And I will make sure that we have a few minutes for some interactions and discussion. So Uma, maybe just let me know 10 or 15 minutes before when you want to finish it, so that I could stop it, and then we have a few minutes for little interaction before we close the session.
Raj, which one do you prefer if some student want to have a question at the end of the presentation or anytime?
I am fine if it is not if it is a clarification question, immediate one, not a discussion, then they can ask it immediately. But if it is a little more discussion where I need to answer and then discuss, then we keep it until the end.
Okay, good.
Great. So we know that the global agriculture, we're facing a lot of challenges. We know the global population, it will be reaching around 10 billion people in 2050. That means we have to provide food for this growing population, so we need to increase our productivity, right? And at the same time, if you see the figure at the bottom, the population trend, we also see that the proportion of people living in urban areas is going to be increased compared to in the rural areas. That means also that we know the food habit, the lifestyle of people living in urban areas is very different, so they demand more food, they have more money, so they also demand more animal-based diet, or animals that also requires more land to produce per kilogram of food or per kilogram of protein. And another important aspect is also in terms of this instability in production. We see that because of drought, because of flooding, because of different climatic changes, because of war or conflicts or trade regulations, we see that the prices of our food, they are fluctuating every year. At the same time, also the food production is fluctuating, it's not stable. So this is also a very big challenge for us. And then the third problem is also that there is more consumers' expectation to have more quality food, to produce more without much agrochemicals. Is good for health. That means also that the food system has to produce in a completely different way to satisfy the demand from the consumers. We also see that our soils, they are getting destroyed because of heavy machineries, because of use of agrochemicals. So we'll need to increase the health of the soil and also the biodiversity in farmlands. If you see, because of monoculture, because of agrochemicals, we see that we do not see all this. For example, the biodiversity that I saw on the right hand side, the beneficial organism, this ladybug, which can control several other pests and also aphids, etc. So we are having very low biodiversity in our farmland. We also respond to climate change, not only the effects of climate change, as I said about this floods and droughts, but also that agriculture contributes quite a lot to the greenhouse gas emissions. So agriculture has to reduce greenhouse emissions and at the same time mitigate the climate change. And farmers' earning, we also know that they are declining per crop or per animals because farmers has to spend a lot of money on buying different inputs for the production. So we also need to address that. So there are many other things, like we also need to increase the resource use efficiency of the substances that we use, for example, agrochemicals or water or minerals, because we know that these substances, they are scarce, and then not only scarce, but also they are expensive. And these resources, when we use excessively, can also affect the environment, can cause pollution of water, soil, air, etc. So we have to reduce, increase the efficiency and reduce the efficiency. So there are different challenges which agriculture is facing, and at the same time there is immense pressure to feed the growing population. So what we have seen is that the population, the production of crops, especially cereals, is increasing since the Green Revolution. We know that around since the 1950s, 60s, it has increased to several fold, and then also in 2050, it is expected also that we need to increase our production by about doubling or a little less than double, according to the different predictions. And how could we produce this? How could we increase so much of productivity, even though we know that we don't have we don't have a land where we could expand our agriculture, right? We have already utilized our land. We cannot go to the moon or Jupiter to do agriculture, so we have to produce this food, this doubling of the food for 2050 from the same amount of land, or even from a smaller land area than it is today. So it's a big challenge, right? Yeah, we need to produce more food. At the same time, we don't have land, we cannot expand our agricultural areas. So this picture shows the total amount of nitrogen used on the left hand side and the amount of phosphorus used on the right hand side in our agricultural system, and then from 1960s until 210. And we see that the amount of nitrogen used has almost increased by about how many folds? About 12 times than it was used in 1960. Similarly, the amount of phosphorus that we have used in our system has also increased more than 5 times. But at the same time, of course, because of Green Revolution, our food production has also increased because of the use of these fertilizers, pesticides, etc. But how much food production have we increased from 1960s when we started using these agrochemicals? Perhaps we have increased our food by 4 times. Since 1960, we have increased 400 times, right? But the amount of inputs of fertilizers that we are using, it's more than 10 times. So what does that mean? That means that we are not using these resources effectively. And in many countries, this phosphorus and nitrogen, they are critical elements for plant production, but they are being subsidized so that they are readily available to or very cheaply to the farmers. So farmers started putting these inputs indiscriminately. So most of these chemicals, most of these nutrients, they are not being used by the plants, but instead we see that they are leaching into the water. Our groundwaters are polluted, going into the river and stream. There is eutrophication. You see that all our lakes and rivers and streams, they are not usable. It's just polluted and it's eutrophied, right? So we need to use these resources. They are not only expensive, but also, for example, phosphorus is a scarce, it's a limited resource. So once it is gone, you cannot generate phosphorus. So we need to use these resources very efficiently. And yes, over the last 60, 70 years, since Green Revolution, we also see there is this very intensification of cropping systems. Before that, everywhere, even in Europe, I think even in, I saw a picture also in Indonesia. In Europe, also farms were very small, and then farmers used to grow varieties of crops in small plots. But then, since more industrialization from the 1960s, then the crops, there are only one or two types of crops that are grown like hundreds of kilometers, the same type of crop. And then using a lot of fossil fuels, lots of agrochemical inputs. So this has been the trend in Europe, and also I see in Indonesia and also in other parts of Asia or Africa. Also, we see this trend with more specialization, more dependence on external inputs, agrochemicals, etc. Of course, this has increased the production, as I have said, increased the food production by about 4 times to 400%. Agrochemicals are also quite effective in protecting the plants from pests and diseases, and also when you have a big, large-scale uniform crops or uniform management, then you have a more, you can control the quality of the product more easily. And this is, as an example, also the same like intensification and monoculture of, is a picture taken from the internet about this oil palm in Indonesia, which is very global. So this is just only one type of crop grown for hundreds and thousands of hectares, depending on, very mechanized, very, depending on inputs, right? And you also might have, or you have already heard about also the different consequences of when we have this sort of monoculture systems on environment and society, etc., and the economics of the small-scale farm holders. So we see that, when we have this intensified, industrialized, and more simplified our system, we see that there's a loss of diversity. We see that our farms, if you look at it, there's not much of diversity. All the beneficial earthworms, the ladybugs, you cannot find them because they are being killed by the pesticides and the agricultural other management that we are using. We depend very much on external inputs like fossil fuels, tractors running in pesticides, etc. That also means that these things are not available for free, so this costs money for the farmers to buy energy and the chemicals, and then also these substances, they are also now, because of globalization and liberalization, it is being transported from other parts of the country, and we see that when there is a war, or when there was a pandemic, then things cannot be accessed and the prices are getting higher, or so depending on external inputs, it makes our system much more vulnerable to different type of risk, both abiotic as well, also the biotic stress. Also, if we look at the big palm, these oil palm plantations in Indonesia, or these big fields of rapeseed in Sweden and everywhere, when you have only one type of crop grown in a very large area, then also, for example, if there is a, let's say, a drought or a flood, then the entire crop, or if there's a disease coming, then the entire crop will be destroyed, right? So there is less there's a very high risk that the entire crop will get failed. And talk about the environmental pollution, about loss of soil, water quality, climate change contribution, and then also this intensification, industrialization, and use of agrochemicals that also we see that also having negative impacts on our human health. So there is sort of a vicious cycle when we look at this intensification and industrialization of agricultural system. So if you look on the left-hand side, we see because of intensification, we use more very high stocking density of animals per unit area, or we over-apply nutrients, fertilizers, pesticides. How we plow the soil, intensive soil tillages, water uses. So what happens is that this causes contamination of soil and water, increased erosion, reduced water retention of the soil, salinization, etc., which in turn have a negative effect on the biodiversity. So we have fewer biodiversity, we have fewer beneficial organisms, our soils are degraded, they are not productive anymore. So when we have this system, then it creates threat to our production system, right? When we don't have earthworms, when we don't have good organisms, pollinators, bees, etc., and the soil is degraded, then our production is threatened. So what we do, then we again go back to using these pesticides and herbicides and more mineral fertilizers. And then it becomes like a vicious cycle that we are being trapped into it when we have this system. And I think you all have also maybe seen this picture about this. We have the 9 planetary boundaries that we should not cross. And these 9 planetary boundaries are the climate change, noble entities, stratosphere, atmospheric aerosol loading, ocean acidification, etc. And then all of these boundaries, they have to be within the green zone if humanity, if we have to thrive, if we have to make development activities. But when it is in the yellow zone, then it is that we have crossed the boundary, that it is a sort of a warning that, we cannot continue on it. And when it is in the red color, then it is completely going out of control. We have to really pull it down. And if you look on the left-hand side, it was from 2015, this planetary boundary was first, and it was made. And then we see that we have already crossed 4 of them, already have crossed the yellow ones and the red ones. The climate change, the diversity, the genetic diversity, we see that we have fewer and fewer crops and different types of crops. We see the phosphorus and nitrogen loading. You see the red extremely. Also the land use system, where many of our forests, many of our natural areas, they have been converted and have been sort of degraded. So this was in 2015. If you look on the right hand side, the figure was from 2023. In 2015, we have crossed only 6 of the planetary boundaries, and then in 2023 we have crossed 6 boundaries out of the 9. So we have also crossed this noble entities, which is like all these chemicals and agrochemicals that we see in the water, antibiotics, etc., plastic, microplastic, etc. So within the very few years, we see that we are really accelerating the degradation and also having negative consequences on our environment. So we must act, right? If we see that things are not sustainable, we cannot continue this business as usual approach. Our biodiversity, our water polluted, our greenhouse gases, so many things are happening that is not sustainable. So we cannot continue this business as usual. We need to change our approach on how we produce our food. And there are different approaches to produce the production. We know that if we continue this trend, like putting more and more fertilizer, pesticides, then we know that it's not going to work. It is going to cross all these planetary boundaries. But instead, if we want to bring those planetary boundaries within the green or within the safe operating zone, where human beings can survive, thrive, and develop, then we have to have a sort of radical approach to crop production, and then two radical, one is not very radical, but an approach which is ecological intensification, and then another more of a radical approach is the sustainable intensification of the agricultural system. So what is sustainable intensification? So it is that we increase the production because we know that the population is going to increase. We need to feed more mouths, so we need to keep increasing the production. But at the same time, we saw that our production has already caused so much of severe environmental damages, so we need to reduce this environmental impact. So what could be possibly we could use organic production systems where we use substances which are less harmful to the environment, or we use this precise use of input. So instead of using, instead of putting, I don't know, fertilizers or pesticides, without looking the status of the crop. That is how we are doing it. We don't look at whether the crop needs fertilizers or whether the crop needs a pesticide. We just spray it everywhere so that all the crops are not affected, but that is not efficient, right? We know that the plants, they need certain amount of nutrition at certain times, so we need to know that, okay, during this stage we can provide this much amount, so we should split the different doses, or we should have a more integrated pest management where we say that, oh, if there's a threshold, there's certain insects are there, then we apply, not just spread them uniformly, even though there are no problems. So this sort of sustainable intensification approaches that we could continue with this system, but that we optimize our system so that we reduce impact on the environment. While the other approach, which is ecological intensification, is that we sort of reduce or completely stop the reliance on external inputs, like external inputs, when I said like fossil fuels, agrochemicals, etc. So how we do this? We design a system where the systems, they interact with each other. For example, if we, instead of using mineral fertilizers, chemical fertilizers, if we have I don't know, if you grow legumes, they could fix nitrogen, or if you grow cover crops, if you have more recycling within the system, then you could substitute that external input with the ecosystem services by biodiversity in the crops. Similarly, how could weeds be controlled, how could pests and diseases be controlled by having more biodiversity within the farm, so that the biodiversity within the farm, the components, they interact with each other to provide ecosystem services. So this radical change approach also requires that the system has to be completely changed. And cropping system diversification is an ecological intensification approach, because we rely on the interactions between the crops to provide ecosystem services. And when I talk about cropping system diversification, it is growing of more than crop species or cultivars. Either they can be field crops, they could be pasture species, or trees, for example, also agroforestry, or the combination of these different types of crop species in the time. I mean, like 1 year after another, or in space, that means at the time. For example, here on the right hand side, you see that instead of growing only one type of crop, you see this is a strip cropping experiment. So I cannot identify, but there are 4 different types of crops that are grown in strip instead of growing one type of crop. So we have, I think, oats, peas, then barley, and then some intercropping. So this is a sort of a diversification in space. So we have a space, and we diversify it with different crops within that space, within the same time. And then we could also be, within the diversification of space, we could also see that on the bottom picture, it's an intercropping of wheat and the fava beans. So here, that they are either they are grown within the same row or as alternating rows. This is also a diversification of crops, because we diversify the type of crops that is grown. Why do we need cropping system diversification? It's all because it can improve the nutrient recycling, biodiversity conservation. It can have natural control mechanism. It can provide beneficial organisms like the ladybugs or beetles, which are beneficial for us, for the agriculture, pollination, etc., increased productivity, more carbon and soil sequestration. In addition to that, when we have more diverse landscape, I think it provides the landscape diversity, which is also very nice, right? Instead of looking, if you just look at if there's only one type of crop, it's not so nice. But if you see different parcels, different types of crops grown in an area, it provides very nice and provides this also landscape diversity that different types of organisms can thrive and interact and provide ecosystem services. We could have less reliance on external inputs when we have diversified cropping systems, more tolerant to stress conditions, resilient to climate change, because also if you grow different types of crop, maybe if there's the drought or a flood, if one of the crop fails, maybe another crop will survive, so the farmers spread out the risk. There's more resilience to climate change effect, more promote more agroecological principles, and also has the potential to improve the product quality and the human health. So when we have more diversified systems and also more less intensified systems, so for example, we reduce the amount of chemicals we use, reduce soil tillage and heavy tractors on it, more organic matter, a combination of crops and livestock with different types of crops grown both in space and time, then we improve the soil fertility, soil health, habitats for wild biodiversity, soil carbon sequestration, etc. And then these all will lead to more restoration of nutrient cycles, better water retention. We have higher number of pollinators and beneficial organisms can reduce greenhouse gas emission, degrade the soil or degrade the land, and not degrade, restore the soil or restore the degraded soil and the land. So when we have such system, then we know that our productivity will be stable, the farmers will have a good yield, more secure land resources. Then when we have such system, then we don't need to put more pesticides or fertilizers, etc. So this becomes more of a virtuous cycle. Before we had this vicious cycle, a bad cycle. Here it becomes like a more virtuous cycle, a good cycle. And this cropping system diversification has also gained a lot of interest during the last 20-30 years, and you see these are the numbers of scientific publications. And then the orange one is the temporal diversification, like crop rotations, and then the yellow ones represents the number of publications concerning spatial diversification, like intercropping or strip cropping, etc. And I will talk more about my research, which is crop diversification with legumes. And in the picture you see it's wheat, which is intercrop with the pea in Sweden. And before that, go into to describe about my experiments and my research on intercropping and crop diversification with legumes, I would like to introduce what are legumes. They belong to the plant Fabaceae or Leguminosae with over 20,000 species. And legumes, we see on the right hand side, the peas and beans, etc. They are very good for human consumption, but also they are good for feeding the animals, for example, in the down picture, the white clover, the animals like it, and they can also be used as a green manure. The legumes are inexpensive, protein and nutritious, very good for human health, and they can also fix atmospheric nitrogen. So when you have legumes in the system, so you could reduce or replace the chemical fertilizers with legumes. And there's also sometimes when we talk legume, pulses, grain legumes, there can be some confusion. So when we talk about legumes, it's the whole plant of any of these Fabaceae family. And what is a pulse? It is the edible dry seed from the legume plant. And when we talk of grain legumes, is those legumes that are cultivated for their seeds. For example, we have beans, lentils, lupins, etc. Either for human consumption, animal consumption, or for production of oils. So yes, why there's a strong interest about legumes and crop diversification is because if you see the land areas in Sweden and what are the different crops grown in this area, see that only about 2% of the land area in Sweden is grown with grain legumes. And legumes can provide a lot of benefits when it is incorporated into our cropping system and also in our food or in our diet. So it can diversify the system. Here in Europe, many parts of Europe, the farmers are concentrated on growing only very few commodity crops like oilseed rape, wheat, and then sugar beet. So then there's less diversification, and you depend much on the agroecological, on external inputs. But when you have legumes integrated into the system, either in space like intercropping or in time, when in the crop rotation, then it can provide lots of agronomic benefits. And then there are also, like Sweden, in most parts of in all parts of Europe, grain legumes are underutilized crops in Europe agriculture, and need to do more research and actions in order to increase its production and human consumption. Even though we use a lot of beans, soybeans products in Europe, most of them come from Brazil, where they grow soybeans by cutting down the rainforest, or from US. So Europe also needs to increase its production of grain legumes. So how could we diversify our cropping system with legumes? So we have different types of legumes, also perennial forest legumes or perennial legumes, where the crops they survive more than 1 year. So we have the red clover, white clover, alfalfa. I think also in the warmer climates you could also have this. You have peasant peas and other different types of beans that can grow for several years. They do not die. After a season, while we have also the annual grain legumes, then they grow only for 1 year, 1 season, and then they die. For example, the peas or fava beans, and these other different types of legumes in Sweden that we have, or in Europe. And the legumes can be integrated in time. If you look at this crop rotation, legumes in crop rotation, so we have the crops sugar beet, barley, winter oilseed rape, and winter wheat, right? These are the very commodity crops, and then most farmers would like to grow these crops again and again because they get a lot of rice and there's no integration. So we could integrate legumes in this crop rotation. You see the legume grassley and fava beans, and also the beds. You see where I put it at the end of the arrow. That if we could integrate this legumes into this very cash crops, then it can provide many benefits to the crop rotation. And then the legumes will also be integrated in space. For example, lentils or oats, you see on the right hand side. So you do intercropping lentils and oats, or fava bean and wheat. So this is a very feasible intercropping strategy. And I just want to show that the legumes, they also have these root nodules. See the picture down. That's where with symbiotic nitrogen fixation bacteria are living. So legumes are a sort of a really good plant, important plant, also in European context, but also in other global south contexts. So how could we integrate in terms when we talk about space? If we have an area, how could we integrate or legumes or diversify the crops? So the first picture shows you could have a row intercropping. So you grow 1 row of legumes and 1 row of cereals, or 1 row. So you have alternating rows intercropping. Could have a mixed cropping where you mix the seeds and you broadcast it, so the different types of crops are grown within the same row. And you could also have a strip cropping system where you have some rows of one crop and then some rows or strips of another crop, as you see on the right hand side of the picture. And this diversification, spatial diversification, it could also be not necessarily only the crops, the cash crops that we grow, but we would have bee crops or trap crops where we have flowering crops on the sides where we could attract more pollinators and bees, etc. And also, could also be that this agroforestry system, which could be very relevant for Indonesian context, over the picture that I saw where you have the monoculture of the oilseed, of the palm oil or coffee or rubber. So we could have more intercropping in those monoculture systems. And when we do intercropping, it is also it can address several challenges, because when we do intercropping, it exploits the ecological principles of competition. It means that the crops, they have different heights, right? So they can utilize the resources, the sunlight, or that they have different root structures, like the wheat and the pea, they have different root structures. They will utilize the different niches in the nutrients. And and then, for example, legumes intercrop with the cereals. The legumes can fix the nitrogen, and then the nitrogen could be taken up by the cereals. So there's a lot of competition, complementary, and facilitation of resources when we do intercropping. And furthermore, another important challenge is that the fields where we grow the crops, they are not homogeneous. They are very different from one part of the field. Or sometimes you have a slope, and then if you look at the slope, then I don't know, some areas there's more water stagnation, the soil is a little more clay or less clay. There's less sunlight because there's a slope, the sun rays. So there's a big heterogeneity within our fields also in Indonesia, especially when you don't live in a very flat area where there's a little hilly mountainous. You see that the soils are different from one part to another within the field itself, because of this sunlight, because of the water, because of the runoff. So things can be could be very heterogeneous or special difference. And this special difference can results in differences in the growth of the plants. You know that in some parts of the field, the crops will be doing good, while in another part of the field, the crops are not doing good because there's less sunlight, or the soil is less fertile, or the soil has less water. So what do people, or what this conventional agriculture deals is that, as I talk about the indiscriminate use of fertilizers or something. So in order to reduce this spatial heterogeneity, you put a lot of mineral fertilizers everywhere. Even though some places, in some spots, maybe you don't need it because there's already a lot of nitrogen or phosphorus, while in some areas within the same field, some areas there might be lacking, but you just put a lot of nitrogen so that everything is more uniform. Or with the modern technology, we have this called precision farming, right? So you see that, okay, in the field, we see that that part of the field is the crops are not doing good because we see they see symptoms of nitrogen deficiency, or there's an area in the field where there's more diseases or weeds coming. So with the ecological precision, you use a satellite or a drone picture, and then you see that this is not uniform. So you go to that specific place where we need nitrogen or pesticide, and then you apply to it. Then that's ecological precision farming. But this is also very technology intensive, and it's not cannot be applied by many farmers even in Europe or US. It's still not applied at all by many of it. And what we think is that when we do intercropping now, I think I'm going. When we do intercropping, it is just like an ecological precision farming, meaning that the crops themselves, they adjust. So for example, to give an example, if you grow crops like this, so in area, if you have a slope area, you will see that in some areas there's less nitrogen, right? So if you grow only wheat, for example, then in areas where there's less nitrogen, or where the soil is very light, sandy, or less water, that area, the wheat will not do good. But in some areas where the soil is favorable, the wheat crops will do very well. So you have these differences in the crop performance within the field. And what we hypothesize is that when you grow two crops together, intercropping, for example, legumes with cereals or oil crop, then it will have reduce this variability. Because in that area, if we grow two crops instead of one, so in that area where there's less nitrogen, then the legumes is there, so the legumes do not require nitrogen, so they can fix more nitrogen, and then that nitrogen is made available to the wheat or cereal crops, right? So similarly, in areas where there's more nitrogen, the legumes, they will not fix the nitrogen because there's no need, they will not fix much nitrogen, and then the wheat will grow. So if you look at it, so they adjust the crops, they will interact with each other, so they will adjust the botanical composition according to the soil nutritional status. So that's why we call it ecological precision agriculture, and then you will get these slides. So I will not go into in details, and just to so we have been trying to see if indeed it's ecological precision agriculture. So we have selected a field which is very heterogeneous. You see, this is the soil electrical conductivity. So the values are red have a very low electrical conductivity, while the green is very high electrical conductivity. So this field is very highly heterogeneous. So if you grow only one type of crop here in this field, we know that the crops will perform differently in different parts of the field, right? Maybe the crops will not perform equally in green or in the red parts, so they will perform differently if you grow only one type of crop. So, but if you grow intercropping of two different types of crops, then we see that probably they will adjust it in some areas. Even though wheat, for example, is not growing well, maybe the peas will grow well because they have different requirements and different conditions. So we set up a strip experiment where we have OP is like an intercropping of oats. Oats is one of the crop, and then oats and peas. So we try different, like as a sole crop, and then the sole crop of oats, sole crop of peas, and then intercropping, and then we see how it affects. And then we did a sampling from these very long strips. We further divided into subplots, and then took the samples from the center of these subplots. You see, so this is how that. So from the center of it, we collected soil samples. We collected also the crop samples to see if the soil, if the crop performance, like the yield or biomass, if it correlates to the soil condition. So this is an interpolated mean of the clay, how much clay content is in that field, and we see that the clay content differs from one part of the field to another, right? If you see, the red one has lower clay content, while the green or blue colors have a very high clay content. And then we recorded the different types of crop yield. When the crops are ready, we harvested it, and then the size of the balls. So this it represents the kilograms of crop harvested. So the small size, you see, it's about 2,000 kilograms per hectare, and then the big circle of the balls is about 12,000 kilograms per hectare. And then the different colors, light blue, medium blue, dark blue, they are the different treatments, the sole crop pea, intercrop, oat and pea. And what we see that according, and then this yield is put on the heat map of the soil electrical conductivity, the red one, the background. And we see that where there is more darker red color, where there is more where there's more darker color, more soil electrical conductivity, there's also more clay content, and there the oats, they tend to be higher when you grow, because this is a sort of more fertile soil, so the sole crop oats tends to be higher, while in the less fertile soil, where you see the lighter one, we see that the peas or the intercropping tends to be higher, because the oats, they need more nitrogen or more nutrition, more water. But in these areas where they are lighter, they don't have it. So here intercropping works better for the legumes. So similarly, in terms of the nitrogen, this is the nitrogen heat map, and the different color is the level of nitrogen in the soil, and then see how the different crops perform. And also here you see on the left-hand side the orange, the elliptical circle, the line mark, you see that where there's less nitrogen, we see that the intercropping is doing well. So the plants, they help each other when the situation, when the environment is harsh, when there's less nitrogen, when there's less nutrition, less water, the crops, they help each other. But when there is more nitrogen, then the crops, they don't help each other. So they don't need to help each other. So how many minutes do I still have? Yeah, I think I have still about an hour. Uma, do I have an hour left?
You have actually 25 minutes, but it's better to have more discussion. That's a good discussion, yeah?
Yeah, I will go into that about the weeds and the things you will get it. So it just shows that we have a lower.
Maybe 10 minutes.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah. So lower weeds in the intercropping. And also we had that drought, this dry period in 2019 in Sweden. So if you grow only one type of crop, then we had a very low yield. For example, the pea yield was super low when we grow one type of crop, and then the oats yield. So if one crop fails because of drought or flood, then another crop will survive, and also another crop will have a higher yield. So this was all the experiments we did in Germany, Sweden and Germany on the different weed control. You see the sole crop pea has a very high weed compared to, this is the yield. On the left hand side is the crop yield, so the peas, intercrop, and then the sole crop peas, and then the weeds are on the right hand side, and we see that the sole crop pea, they have a very high weed biomass compared to when it is intercrop. So intercropping can reduce the weeds. And then there is this coefficient of variation, CV. You see that on the top of the figure, we see that the higher the coefficient of variance, that means the higher is the variation in the crop yield in the field, so yield heterogeneity. So the intercropping has only 10.8 compared to sole crop pea, which is 26.3. That means that if you grow only pea in a field with very heterogeneous conditions, there will be very high variability in terms of the crop performance. But when you do intercropping, then it could reduce this variability in the crop performance. We just also look at the pea and barley on the soil biodiversity, and we have seen that this is on the left hand side is when you grow only pea as a sole crop, and then on the right hand side is the intercropping pea with barley, and we see that there are more. You see the number of species on the biodiversity. We have more biodiversity in the intercropping compared to the sole crop, and also we have more beneficial organisms in the for example, we have like the shear feeding and more beneficial organisms in the intercrop, and less pests. For example, the gastropoda, the snails and the slugs that are destroying it is higher, 18% when we grow pea as sole crop, but when we do intercrop, then we reduce this pests. Yeah, so we have more biodiversity in the intercropping. These are different types of carabid beetles that we have measured, and then you see that there's more biodiversity in the pea and barley intercropping. Also, these are also the beneficial organisms, hoover flies and ladybugs, and we look at the intercropping of pea and barley, and then sole crop pea, and then oats and lupin, and we see that there are more beneficial organisms in intercropping. Similarly, we look at different types of earthworms in the intercropping and the sole crop, and the 3 different types of earthworms. We see that the intercropping has more earthworms, diversity in number of earthworms compared to the sole crop oat or sole crop pea. We look at the weed diversity. Also, we see that there are more. The intercropping controls the weeds. At the same time, it also increases the weed biodiversity. If you look at the xenon biodiversity index, so the intercropping has you see pea plus barley is 1.4, so it has more different types of weeds in this intercropping. Yeah, I am wondering if I should hurry up, but just to show, I talk about more of the ecological precision farming. Now I will talk about this ecological intensification. So intercropping, it's a positive effects on when you do it in the organic farming system. We see that this is the grain yield of lentils when it's grown as a sole crop, lentils and oats intercrop, and then the oats grown as a sole crop. And the wheat biomass, we see that it has reduce considerably when we do the intercropping of lentils and oats, and also we have the land equivalent ratio LER of 1.34 when we do intercropping, meaning that we require about 34% less land in order to produce the same amount of crop when they are grown as sole crop. So we see, with reduction and higher LER intercropping. Similarly, this is also the source of when we do lentils intercropping, that there's more complementarity that here in the intercropping with lentils and oats, the oats, they are only sown at only 20% of the seeding density, just to support the lentils, but the yield of the oats was 65%. So there's a complementarity. So the legumes, they provide the services so that the oats can have an increased productivity compared to the sole crop. Intercropping is not only for organic agriculture, but also we see that there are benefits in conventional system. This is pea and barley intercropping. On the left-hand side is without any application of nitrogen, and on the right-hand side is with the application of nitrogen. And we see that when we do intercropping, we have higher LER, that means we require less land to produce the same amount of food or crop than we grow a sole crop. LER 1.18, so above 1 is positive, is good. And then what else? I think I will not go much into details because I will share you, but this. We had an experiment also in 2018, the drought, we had a big drought, and then it shows the amount of precipitation in 2019, it was very low. And then how the crops were affected, and how we saw that when we do intercropping during the drought period, we see that it was doing much better than growing crops as a sole crop. So more details, I will not go into it. Maybe later on, if we have a time, we could just discuss a little bit about if there is a possibilities of intercropping in those Indonesian large-scale plantations, or where monoculture crops are grown as monoculture system. Crop diversification in time, we have an experiment also where this is the crop rotation in Sweden, reference rotation, and we further diversify that rotation with the legumes by intercropping the blue ones, and we've also further add the cover crops, so that are grown one after one crop is harvested before another main crop is grown. So we have fodder legume, ryegrass, buckwheat, phacelia, and then we reduce in the crop diversified rotation, reduce the amount of organic fertilizer applied. This one 600 kilograms biofer. This is the amount of organic fertilizer applied in the reference system, less diversified, and in the diversified rotation, we see that we reduce the amount of fertilizer application. And what we see is that in this system, we see that this diversified system with more legumes and cover crops, they do better in terms of retaining the soil organic carbon and also the soil nitrogen. You don't have to look into the details, but that the reference and the diversified system with more legumes in intercrops and cover crops, we see that, and there we have put less amount of nitrogen, but then we got similar or even increased yield in diversified rotation. So, and also this is how it looks like. I think I will not go into it, but we think that our crop diversification is easy. It has a lot of benefits. Probably that's what I showed it, but also it is not so easy. For if it has a lot of benefits, then everyone would have adopted it right into cropping or very well-planned crop rotation. But farmers do not adopt it because there are many lock-ins, many barriers for the farmers to adopt crop diversification. For example, the farmer has already a knowledge about growing crops as a monoculture, use of it, and he has invested money in buying tractors and machines, so he has to continue it. And then it's also about the policies. Many government policies, they are still into like feeding the world narratives, even though we produce enough food to feed people in 2050, but So what is the root cause of food insecurity? Food is available. It is just that people don't have the money to buy it. They don't have access. 800 million people, they live below $2 per day. So these people are the ones who cannot afford to buy food, but food is available. So, but still the policies and stuff it's about increasing food, put more chemicals, put more machineries, and increase the food. This has been a lot of things. I will not go into the different lockings, but it's a very interesting article, so you could read on this if you're interested in why there is no transition to more agroecological or more diversified cropping system. And yeah, these are some of my friends and colleagues who've been working together and helping with the field. And yeah, this will be my last slide, and I would just like to share you some of the opportunities and possible collaboration. So there's a PhD course in cropping system diversification that is starting in May 2025. If anyone in your university is interested, they could apply for it. This course is attended by people from all over the world. We also have a course program, MSc in agroecology. This is also a very popular master's program, and I think every year we have about 1 or 2 students from Indonesia coming in during the last 2-3 years. I'm the sort of deputy program director of this master's agroecology. So this is an opportunity. You could look on the internet, SLU and then Masters Agroecology. You will see that. I think there are also some scholarships and stuff. I'm coordinating a master's thesis in agroecology. So my students, they have interest to study all this agroecology and related problems in not only in Europe but also in global South. So it's a possibility that they could come and work together with your students in terms of thesis or work separately or being co-supervised from SLU and also from your university. And we have a lot of projects. I have a lot of projects, but also my colleagues have a lot of projects in crop diversification, and we receive a lot of internships from different parts of the world, either to do an internship or do their thesis work. So and also when the students from different universities come to do thesis work or internship, then it's a joint supervision. So there's more collaboration with the teachers and researchers from your university with our university. So this is a very good opportunity. And myself also, I have worked, I have lived in Africa, Asia, and worked. So I have a very strong interest in food system transition. So yeah, I would like to collaborate with you and also other institutes and researchers and teachers for both for teaching and research. With this, I would like to say thank you for your attention, and you will get this slides from, I think, from me, an updated slide, and I'm happy to take questions, comments, and discussions from you. And sorry for taking too much time.
Thank you, Dr. Raj. It's very interesting topic, and I actually really want to put this into my courses. Unfortunately, I'm not a good teacher, so but you explain it very well. So yeah, maybe it will allow me. I also want to use this slide for some courses. Because, for example, actually we have some courses in sustainable agriculture related to sustainable intensification and agroecological intensification for the 3rd year. Okay. But I'm still not because this thing really, even in practice we do that in Indonesia, but not really put this into education. Still many people, many researchers and lecturer in our university still not familiar what is sustainable intensification, what is agroecological intensification. What they know is only intensification. So it's more on conventional intensification. So yeah, I'm happy that you put this into this course as like how to call it, to give an overview to students before they go to the third year. And actually, I also have a lot of questions, but this is not for me. This is for students. We can discuss further later in person when I met you. So yeah, there are some opportunities that maybe Dewi, Santi also interested to do PhD there, but we can again discuss about it later. And Rati, maybe can you read the question from student for Dr. Raj?
I think there is echo.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's better from directly from this, because the voice is not very good. Okay, so there is a question from Rafli Pasha. What impacts can occur from having a crop diversification system, especially on biodiversity and soil health?
Yeah, like as you have seen, like we see that when we do crop diversification intercropping, we saw that we have more beneficial organisms. We could have more in terms of soil health. Also, I briefly saw that the earthworms, which is a very good soil health indicator, we have more earthworms when we do crop diversify. We also see that the amount of carbon and soil nitrogen in the soil, it is also more preserved in the crop diversified system. That is about the soil and also in terms of the biodiversity. We have seen that there are more. I saw that beetles, the number of beneficial organisms, beetles and less wings, they were more compared to when you grow as a sole crop or monoculture. And what was that I wanted to say was another important thing was, we also see that there was a reduction in pest, for example, aphids or snails. So when we do intercropping, because we have more beneficial organisms that are eating those pests, and so there is a positive impact. You see that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, I have some students doing thesis on legume and other vegetable crops. The thing was that many aphids went to legume, but then the main crop, he grew chili and tomato. This aphid did not go to the main crop. Instead, they went to legume. Is there any explanation on that?
That's the very classical. That's how it is. That when you do intercropping, so we need to find good companion plant companion in the way that they are beneficial to each other. So you see that if you grow only one type of crop, then you will have a lot of aphids in that crop, right? But if you grow different types of crops, we see that this diversification has an effect on the aphids also. So maybe you have pulled that because of crop diversity, you have less aphids on the tomatoes
and chili.
So you have less effect on that, right? So that is a positive effect, right? So what is your target crop? What is your main cash crop? And then you could have a sacrificial crop if you want, for example, the peas, if it attracts all the aphids, but you could sacrifice that crop, and then your main cash crop is
So we
have to think different ways.
I saw that as a benefit, but other teachers, they saw it as when they have this polyculture, they expect both to grow good. And there are many explanations on that, and we indeed need to go deeper on that. But let's move to the next question.
Yeah.
I think we can combine the question of Nesita and Haris. This related to legume.
Yeah.
The benefit of legume.
Yeah. I mean, you could also see on the legumes have a lot of benefits. So when you grow only cereals after cereals, if you grow legumes in between the cereals, so it acts also as a it acts as a break crop. So the disease from one crop to another could be stopped by having these legumes, which is a completely different crop from other cereals. So that is agronomic benefit. Also, legumes can fix nitrogen. So you could reduce nitrogen application. It could also, if you grow as intercropping legumes with cereals, the legumes, they will occupy the space where weeds will come up. So you could also have effective control of weeds. And then we talk about also possible benefits on maybe with flowering. It could also attract more pollinators and bees, etc. So there are many beneficial effects of legumes, and also legumes are it's a really good crop for human being, for healthy diet. Less you require less inputs to grow legumes compared to other crops.
Do you think there is like a direct connection between this? Because legume is like fixing nitrogen from the air, and is there any direct relation between the root from legume that maybe can transfer this nitrogen to other crop around the legume?
That's a very good question. Often we see this effect on the next crop because the legumes will fix the nitrogen and they will be available in the root nodules, and then the transfer from the root nodules to the soil, it can take some time. So, or it might not be instant that the legumes fix it and the plants take up, but the nitrogen is in the soil already when they have fixed it. So sometimes if the legume crop dies early, or the root nodules, if they are broken, then the nitrogen is available. But the connection is that when the legumes, they will fix more nitrogen if the soil has less nitrogen content. So, and then at the same time, if you do intercropping with cereals, then the cereals, because they are grown together with the legumes, there is a competition. So the cereals will take up more nitrogen from the soil, and then the soil has less nitrogen, and the legumes will fix more nitrogen. So cereals will take up more nitrogen, legumes will fix more nitrogen. So it's a benefit for both of it.
That's very interesting. So this also answer our quite long experiment, but again, we can discuss it later about it. Maybe we can write together about this as well. And there is another very interesting question. How does this from Senia? How does intercropping act as an approach to ecological intensification in agriculture?
So when we say ecological intensification, that means we increase we intensify the interactions between components in the system. So we don't intensify the use of chemicals, but we intensify the interactions between the crops. So when we do intercropping, I said it really increases the interactions between different types of crops. If you grow two types of crops, they get more interaction. Similar, I talked about the example of these legumes and cereals intercropping. So the legumes will fix more and more nitrogen, and the cereals will take up more and more nitrogen. So this is an ecological intensification. And also within the same area, we have, instead of growing one crop, then there is not intensification. But then if we grow different types of crops, either as an intercrop or a strip cropping, then there is more. We intensify the reliance between the interactions. So it could be that we could control the weeds if you grow peas in between the cereals. So instead of the weeds that will grow up, you could control by having peas, the cash crop, right? So yeah, so the benefit is that that's called ecological intensification, that we rely the interactions between the components, maybe different crops in the intercropping system.
Yeah, there are so many questions. I can send it to you later.
Yeah.
I also hear a call for praying now, but yeah, just one more question, and then later let me refresh this question. It's actually if the soil, if the land before used a lot of chemical input, but then it want to be transformed to a more sustainable way using cover crop. What is about the yield? Will it reduce or higher?
No, cover crops will never reduce the yield unless you have planted it in a way that the cover crop. The idea of the cover crop is that after you finish growing the main crop, there is a gap between growing the next crop. For example, if you grow rice, after you harvest the rice, there's a gap where the field is. There is nothing in the field until the next crop. So we cover that part of the area. That area, instead, if you let that area exposed, or if you plow it and if there's rain or coming, then all the nutrients will go, or nitrogen will release as nitrous oxide emission. So that area, that period between the two crops, we grow a crop instead of leaving the land naked. And then the idea is that these crops will prevent this leaching of nutrients or emission, and also at the same time, it is a living field now, right? So it can have the roots and more biodiversity, earthworms, and then this crop will be also integrated into the system. That you will plow that, you will not harvest the cover crop. The cover crop will be integrated into the soil, so it will have increased the soil carbon, soil nitrogen, etc. So yeah, irrespective of whether the field was using agrochemicals or not, having a cover crop, it's really good for the next crop. And so it is also, cover crops could also restore the soil that has been destroyed by chemicals. You should watch this film called My Big Small Farm. It's something like this. Have you heard of that?
What?
It's a movie called The Biggest Small Farm or something like this. You could look at it. It's a story based in California, where they have restored the soil that was completely destroyed by agrochemicals and others by using cover crops and stuff.
Yeah, we watched together in Wageningen. So yeah, I think we must stop. But Dewi, Santi, do you want to say something? No? So actually this course is taught by Dewi and Santi. They're in another branch of Brawijaya University. And thank you so much, especially with these opportunities and call. Maybe we can discuss further later. The Dewi and the Santi, they need to do PhD also. Although they are staff of Brawijaya, but then they need now they are still having a master degree and they must do PhD. Who knows that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So
thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much. And I will see you maybe early next year.
Absolutely. You're very welcome, and feel free, if the students have questions, they could write to me. And also, if I have rushed my presentation because of the time, but they could go through the slides, and if they have questions, they could ask me, or also if they want some questions, if they want further education or anything, or questions relating to my research, they are very welcome to write to me, and also all the staff.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Silakan.
Thank you, Bu Uma. Baik, terima kasih banyak atas partisipasinya pada hari ini. Untuk hari ini silakan absen dulu melalui sistem. Nggak usah direspon ya. Kan kemarin saya nge-share cuma untuk diskusi pertanyaannya, bukan untuk respon. Coba di diskusi pertanyaan. Oh, tugasnya DPT. Oh, praktikum. Oh, iya.